Okay, everyone. Welcome to our next lecture. This lecture, we're going to talk about demonstrative pronouns slash adjectives. Um, um, we'll just get into it. All right. So in English, we have demonstrative case, if you want to call it that, in English. This and these, or that and those. In English, we don't really have, case or gender, and it almost seems instinctual how to use this and these, that and those. There are other words that we may mess up the form of it in trying to learn proper English, but this and these and that and those are pretty simple as far as English language goes. So they have two functions. They function as either a pronoun or an adjective. So if something is functioning as a pronoun, it's referring to a person, right? That is mine. Whose car is that? That is mine. If it's an adjective, then it's going to modify a noun that's in the sentence, that car. So the key, before we get started on demonstrative pronouns, the key to knowing whether or not the demonstrative is functioning as a pronoun or an adjective is going to be whether or not the demonstrative has an antecedent or it modifies a noun. You can see in the first sentence, it's not modifying anything. It doesn't have an antecedent. That is mine. And depending on what you're talking about, the person you're talking to knows what you're referring to. You're referring to something that doesn't make it into the sentence. So you could be talking about the same thing. You could be talking about the car. If you say that is mine, you don't include the car, then that is acting as a pronoun. If you say that car is mine, then that is modifying car, making it an adjective. So we call these demonstratives because they demonstrate or point out specific things, people, things, ideas in a sentence. And they clarify identity. That man, that thing, whatever it is. So Greek has demonstratives, and the two forms, the nominative forms, are hautos. You see the rough breathing mark and the circumflex. Hautos would be this or these, depending on whether it's singular or plural. And ekanos, which is that or those, depending on whether it's singular or plural. Like most words, most nouns in Greek, the Greek demonstratives do have case and gender. Just like in English, when it functions as a pronoun, its case is determined by its function in the sentence. Same thing. When it's an adjective, its case, number, and gender are determined by its antecedent. Antecedent being the noun that it modifies. So the really simple way to know whether a Greek demonstrative is acting as a pronoun or an adjective is whether or not you have to make an additional translation because the noun is missing, and I'll get into that in just a second, or if it clearly modifies a noun. And really, that is all. It's important for sentence structure. It's important for translation of the sentence. But if you're translating hautos or kanos correctly, then you're going to see where it fits in the sentence. It's not going to be difficult to figure out. You just need to make sure you translate it correctly, and then you'll see where it fits in the sentence. It's not going to be difficult. So here it is. Hautos, this, these, kanos, that, those. And here is the singular paradigm for masculine, feminine, and neuter. You can see that the form is very similar to the noun paradigm that you've already memorized. You can see that it adds a towel in most of the forms, and that carries over to the plural. This is just a paradigm that you're going to have to memorize. Here's the singular paradigm, and sort of moving across the top for the nominative, you got hautos, haute, and tauta or tauto. I think the average person would probably say tauto, but it's technically tauta because it's omicron. And then the genitive case, tautu, tautes, tautu, dative, tauto, taute, tauto, and then the accusative, tautan, tautain, and tauta. So it's just, you're just going to have to memorize the paradigm for hautos and also for akanos. And here's the singular paradigm, masculine, feminine, neuter. And so when I show these slides, and Bill Mounce puts these slides together, you see that some of these have it's like a highlighted brownish, some of the letters are in black, some are in like a brownish color. That's his way of showing you that if you memorize the noun paradigm that or that you should know by now, the paradigm for hautos, those brownish letters are where it would be different in some way potentially from what you're accustomed to. You can see the plural doesn't have really much change at all. Same thing with akanos. And really, there's no change in the plural form of akanos, akanoi, akani, akana. So you'll just have to memorize those paradigms. Now, when you're translating, it's very helpful if you want to go to section 13.7 in your textbook. And I wish that I had a slide for this, but if you would pause the video now, get your textbook and go to page 131, go to section 13.7, because that's going to show you how to translate hautos or akanos or akani, whatever. In this instance, it's akani. So pause the video really quickly, grab your textbook, go to 13.7. Okay, so if you look at 13.7, the way that you're going to translate these demonstratives when they appear as a pronoun. Now, remember, a few seconds ago, I said if it's a pronoun, typically it's going to appear in a sentence and it's not modifying another noun. So this is mine, right? There's no other noun that it modifies, right? This car is mine. It's modifying car, so it's an adjective. So when it shows up sort of alone, that's not really the best way to say it, but when it shows up alone as a pronoun, then you're going to add, in many cases, almost all cases, you're going to add the gender. So hautos means this, but when you're translating a sentence, I want you to think this man, because that is masculine, singular, nominative, right? This man. And the same thing with akani. That's feminine, plural, feminine nominative, plural. So those women, you wouldn't say these women, right? Because that doesn't make sense in English. You're going to translate hautos and akani as either this, that, or these, those, based on how you would translate it in English. So the English is going to help you know which form to use when it comes to translating. So, but if you look at 13.7, look at hautos, this man or this one. Akanos, that man or one. Alte, this woman. Tauta, this thing, right? So you're going to follow the gender that the declension, that the paradigm is, when you memorize a paradigm, if it shows up as as a feminine, then you're gonna translate that this woman, that woman, those women, these women. So just use 13.7 as a guide for how to do that. And that's how you're going to do it when you're translating the sentence. So when you see hautos or a form of hautos in a sentence, don't just translate it this, even if you don't add the gender. I want you to get in the habit of translating it by putting the gender. So every time you see hautos, I don't want you to think this. I want you to think this man, right? Okay. So when you see it as an adjective, the noun that the demonstrative modifies will always have the article. And you'll see that just like with regular adjectives, you'll see that it follows the same form as the noun that is modifying. And just like other things in Greek, it could appear either before the article in the noun or after the article in the noun. You can see the sentences here: hautos, ho anthropos. And this is what I want you to do when you translate the sentences. I want you to translate each word and parse out each word. So I think this is where maybe some of you guys are getting messed up in sentence translation, is I want you to translate sentences word by word. Take one word at a time. Completely parse out each individual word on a piece of paper and then put it together in English. So if I were translating this sentence, I would say hautos. That is a masculine nominative singular. That is this man. Write it down, this man. And then I'd go to ho anthropos, the man. So this man, the man. That doesn't make any sense, right? So you'll drop the article, this man. And you see another example there with the plural. That is literally the men, those men. So you're going to drop the article. It's going to be those men. That's probably not the best example, because if you write that sentence out in English, translating each word, you'd see that the word men shows up twice, but anthropoi is men or anthropos. But I think you get the meaning there, that when you have a demonstrative that is modifying a noun, that noun is going to have an article. And that's going to be one of the ways you're going to be able to determine whether it's acting like a pronoun in a sentence or it's acting as an adjective. If you see a form of hautos that has the same form, the case, number, gender, has the same form as a noun with an article, that's going to be a dead giveaway that that is acting as an adjective. And you're going to translate it accordingly. Now, this is something you're going to see some in the New Testament. If you'll look at section 13.9, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this. Look at section 13.9. Sometimes the demonstrative pronoun is weakened for the sake of translation. And I'll show you what we mean. So the next slide here. So you see hautos, megas, klethesetai, setai. So you haven't learned that word yet. It's fine. Literally, if we were to parse out each word and translate each word, then we would translate this 3-word sentence in Greek as this man. That's hautos. Megas means great or large. That's one of your vocabulary words for this week. We'll just say great, because large would indicate, the context would tell you whether it meant large like Goliath or great like a great man, Abraham, right? So this man, great, and then this verb, he will be called. So you haven't learned that yet. That's fine. So literally this sentence, this man, great, he will be called. In sentences like this, and it's all about context. And if you look at section 13.9, it gives you some examples. It actually gives you a biblical example of where the Greek demonstrative is weakened and it's translated differently. So Luke 132, hautos estai megos kai wihos, right? Euphistu plethesetai. So literally, if you translate that sentence word by word, it will be this man, he will be great and son of the Most High, he will be called. He will be great and will be called son of the Most High. That's a long sentence. But look at our example here. We translated it, each word. When we translated each word, we said, this man, great, he will be called. And in this case, it's hard to tell because it's a small snippet of that larger sentence. But in this case, the Greeks knew to diminish hautos and just say he will be called great. So you drop this man. I think that's a lot of extra work. So if you see a sentence with hautos, I will accept this man, comma, he will be called great. The only way I will not accept that is if it doesn't make any sense in English. If it is really clear to you to drop it for clarity in English, do it. But moving forward, I think it's better to translate it. This man, he will be called great. And I'll tell you why. Because what you don't get in the English translation, so the Greek of Luke 132, the English translation that we have says he will be great and we call son of the Most High, right? That's fine. By adding, I think, this man, he will be great and we call son of the Most High, it sort of highlights the man. It adds some emphasis to it that you don't get when you drop it. So when you're translating Greek demonstratives, only drop the demonstrative according to 13.9 when it's weakened some. For your sentences that you translate, only drop it if it makes sense and doesn't change the meaning of the sentence. Otherwise, I'm fine with you translating it, this man, comma, he will be great. I just don't think it's something you need to remember at this stage. It may be something that you need to focus on later as you grow and as you move past Greek 2 if you want to. But right now, I think it's fine if you just translate it that way. And I hope that's simple enough. Okay, moving on from demonstratives. So up to this point, we've learned nominative, genitive, dative, and accusative. There is a fifth case in nouns that you do see in the New Testament, and it is the vocative case. And you can see in your textbook on 13.10 where Dr. Mounce explains the vocative case. But essentially, it's used for direct address. You see the example here, you haven't learned it yet, but the example here is Kyrie, which is a form of kurios or Lord. The example he gives, and it's a very good example, if you look on page 132, he has translated Matthew 7:21. Not everyone saying to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. Lord, Lord appears in the New Testament, the documents that we have, appears in the vocative case, because it is where those that are saying it, that are saying Lord, Lord, are directing their speech to the Lord. And it says it twice here, Lord, Lord. It appearing twice doesn't have anything to do with the vocative case, but it has everything to do with the fact that they are directly addressing someone. Context will make it really easy to detect, but it's not really going to change translation that much, because in the midst of the translation, it's going to make sense in context. So let me show you what I mean. So let's look at the vocative singular for man, for anthropos, right? So nominative anthropos, or so nominative anthropos, man, genitive anthropou, of man, or man's, dative anthropo with the subscript, to or for a man, accusative anthropon, man, vocative anthrope, man. So the difference is not in translation in terms of translating the right word or translating the right form of the word. The difference is in the sentence that you're writing, that you're translating, that the vocative case is showing that the noun that's in the vocative case is being addressed specifically. So really it's not every noun, right? It's only nouns that can be addressed, right? Man or Lord or, things like that, proper nouns. But you can see even doxa, glory, of glory, to, for glory, 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 graphe, right? Ergon. You've got work, of work, to, for work, work, work. It's the same thing in the plural. It can get a little confusing because if you see here, let's see, the masculine singular vocative is pretty easy to pick out, right? But look at the feminine vocative. It looks like the nominative. And then in the neuter, it looks like the accusative and the nominative. So context is going to tell you how to translate it. And then across the entire paradigm for the plural, you can see that the nominative and the vocative have the same form. All right, a couple of other things that you need to know is adjectives can have degrees. And the reason that we're bringing it up in this chapter is because one of the words that you're learning this week is megas, which means great or large. And so adjectives in Greek can have degrees. And this is really the first adjective that it applies to. But you can see megas will be large. Metzon would be larger. Megastas would be largest. But what's interesting about the time period when the New Testament was being written is that during that period in the first century, within Koine Greek, the superlative, which means largest, was kind of dying out and wasn't used that much, and it was replaced by the comparative. So context tells the reader whether larger or metzon means larger or largest. So context would tell them, but it would still be translated larger, right? I'm just throwing this out. The larger of the three. Well, that's not really how we would say it, right? We'd say the largest. And so it's just a small thing that you have to remember that form. And for context, that is section 13.11 of your textbook. Another odds and ends. There's a handful of words in Greek, not many. It's probably 10 or less, maybe. The technical term is a crassus. And a crassus is a word that is formed by combining two words. So you are learning the word kago this week as a vocabulary word, and it is a crassus. formed by kai, which means and ego, which means I. So kago means and I or but I. And all the forms of crassus that you need to know for your college experience in Greek are on page 418 in the textbook. And then lastly, one of the words that you're learning this week is polis. Now, you're not going to want to confuse it with polis, which is one of your vocabulary words, but polis. It means much or many, depending on, it's going to be much or many depending on how it's best translated. And this is just a new paradigm that you're going to have to learn. So it's regular in all situations except for four. And you see those four listed right here in the brownish, but you're just gonna have to memorize this paradigm: polis, poloi, much or many. So polis would be much or many in the singular, much or many in the plural. And again, that's just another paradigm you have to remember. But the fortunate thing is you're going to be able to pick out. You need to let your brain help you a little bit. So even though you may not remember right now that polis means much or many, learn to recognize the form so that you recognize, okay, I've got much or many on my hands here, but I need to try to remember the case. Is it nominative, genitive, accusative, or dative? I mean, dative or accusative. And so learn to recognize how the word, the actual word, how it's written, because you can see that in most cases you've got two lambdas, except for in the nominative singular you've got one lambda here in the masculine and the neuter. You just have to memorize these paradigms. But your workbook exercise is going to help you do that. Okay, last thing. Let's go over your vocabulary words for this section. You've got gune, gunekos, which is woman or wife. All right, so this is a mouthful, but I wanted to use it as an opportunity to double down on some of the things you learned the first week, like your diphthongs. So just like in English, you can pronounce words that have a lot of letters that you don't recognize by breaking it up into syllables. And this is a trick that I learned in the fourth grade or so, that if you're trying to break up the syllables, that every time, if you put your hand on your chin, every time your chin comes down, that's a syllable. And so pronounce Greek words phonetically, meaning that you're going to pronounce the individual sounds of the letters, unless it's a diphthong, and you're going to pronounce the sound that diphthong makes. So this word, we're going to kind of sound it out together. So delta iota, de, kappa, and then you've got alpha and iota. That's a diphthong that makes the sound I. So chi. Omicron makes the ah sound. You can say o if you want to, but ah. And it's one syllable because your chin came down when you said it, ah. And then the sigma and the upsilon, su. And then the nu and the eta is ne. So dikai, asune. Dikai, asune. Dikai, asune. That means righteousness. That shows up a lot in the New Testament. In fact, that particular form shows up 92 times in the New Testament. All right, dodeca, that means 12. This is going to be easy to remember because you see the rough breathing mark there, and you've got the rough breathing mark gives the H sound, so he. The alpha and the upsilon means it's ow. And then the tau omicron upsilon is 2 because the omicron upsilon is a diphthong. So you've got, remember the H sound, so he, al, to, how to. So it sounds just like in English, how to, Howto, how to. And this is singular, himself, herself, itself, plural, themselves. Kanos, that, either man, woman, or thing. Plural, those, men, women, things. This is the Ada is used a lot, and there's actually in the back of your textbook all the forms that you might see of Ada. This is not hey, right? This is not a rough breathing mark. So this is not an article, a definite article. This is a, and you see that it's got the smooth breathing mark and the accent mark. It means or that. There is a 100% chance that is going to throw you for a loop if you don't remember it, because you're going to see it in a sentence and think it's an article. And the reason I know that is because this haunted me when I took Greek. For some reason, we get in a hurry translating sentences, and I had no idea why there was an article thrown in there, and it'll ruin the entire sentence. So you're just going to have to remember that if you see that smooth breathing mark and that accent, it means or that. There's kago, and I, or but I. Makarios means blessed or happy. Here's the masculine form is megos, the feminine form is megale, and the neuter form is mega. It means large or great. Polis means city, not polis, right? But polis means city. There's polis, means much, many, or if it's used as an adverb, means often. Hos means how. And semeion means sign. Semeion kind of sounds like sign a little bit. Semeion means sign or mirror. Okay, that's a lot. But if you boil down everything that we talked about in this lecture, you've got the demonstratives, which either act as a pronoun or an adjective. If the demonstrative appears by itself, then it's going to be a pronoun, and you're going to have to add man, woman, or thing in the singular or the plural, right? Then you've got hautos and akanos, this, these, that, those. You've got to learn those paradigms. And then those sort of odds and ends rules about crassus, some of those other things. Just scroll back through some of this. All of this is in your textbook, and I go, how it is in your textbook. Stay on your vocabulary. And as far as what we are learning in this section, it's not difficult. It's just more stuff that you have to memorize. But keep up the good work, and I will see you all very soon. Let me stop sharing, and I'll see you next time.